Hello, everyone. I'm Timothy Go, and this is Industry Insider with Dassault Systems, a brand new series that will tackle the fundamental question many companies are facing today. How can technology help us through the current COVID-19 pandemic crisis and beyond? So, what's out there for your company to use that will make sure your business continues moving along through the stage of disruption and also be ready for the next one? Or for a new normal, whatever that new normal evolves to be. Now, here on Industry Insider with Dassault Systems, we will examine the different ways businesses are transforming during this crisis and in its aftermath. We start episode 1 today with the topic du jour, COVID-19. The pandemic is disrupting the way we used to do business. It has significantly impacted companies big and small. While some have found ways to thrive and profit, many more find the current climate challenging. As simple as how coworkers interact with each other is hampered, and that leads to a domino effect that results in low productivity, missed opportunities, and lost revenues. So today, we will look at ways for industries to not just survive the new normal, but also implement processes that will make sure businesses will continue to thrive, even as we move forward to an unknown future. All this with the help of technology that's already out there and ready for you. In this episode, we will hear from Dassault Systems Executive Vice President, Asia Pacific, and Managing Director for Asia Pacific South, Mr. Samson Khaou. And later, Ms. Christine Bridges-Taylor of B&R Enclosures will join me to discuss how a collaborative platform is changing the way her company does business. And then Sandra Ng, the Group Vice President for the Practice Group at IDC Asia Pacific, will put her case and convince us that digital transformation needs to happen right now. You too can take part and ask questions while the show is on. Simply type it in the comment section below, and the right person will get the answers you need. But first, how can the manufacturing industry adapt to new challenges? In fact, what are the disruptions the companies are facing today? Dassault Systems Executive Vice President for Asia Pacific and Managing Director for Asia Pacific South, Mr. Samson Khaou, picks it up from here.
The COVID-19 crisis is accelerating the change of the global value delivery models with impact for manufacturer and supply chain. For many years, companies have aligned their global supply chain in response to shifting manufacturing cost structure and improvement in advanced manufacturing technologies. The COVID-19 crisis have revealed that resilience and access to critical supplies and markets are emerging as a rising priority. The global enterprise are now seeking to mitigate risk by securing better access to the supplies and markets. They are exploring options for adding backup production and distribution capacity, as well as for reoptimizing their inventory. They are also seeking to improve their supply chain flexibility, to strengthen their risk monitoring capabilities, and to reinforce capacity to respond quickly to new situations. The manufacturing industry have to adapt to disruption with change in demand, supply of raw material and components, and most importantly, workforce availability and safety at the production site. In this recovery phase, the search is constantly on the fastest way to ramp up production while still respecting all the safety operating procedure for the workforce. In this challenging time, the need for digital transformation is greater than ever. Digital acceleration allows manufacturers to create optimized contingency plans that take into account real-time data and conditions. It helps them understand the impact of disruption on supply chain and manufacturing operation. Our belief is that the virtual world improve and extend the real world. The virtual twin experience has a major role to play, as it is a virtual model of a physical production system that incorporates the knowledge and know-how from the real-world manufacturing process. As an accurate representation of working conditions that use real-time data, it allows manufacturers to assess virtually the changes before implementing them in the real world. They also can set KPI to measure the performance in real time and adjust operation accordingly. To support the resilience of the manufacturing, the KPI are about how to source for the critical component, how to collaborate seamlessly across multiple stakeholders, and how to create a contingency plan for production, and finally, how to deliver to customer depending on their demand and their level of inventory.
And that right there is Mr. Samson Khaou from Dassault Systèmes reminding us that there are technologies and solutions out there to help your business in this time of disruption. Well, when we return, how changes in business priorities push an Australian company to move forward with business transformation with 3D and Dassault Systèmes 3D Experience Platform. Ms. Christine Bridges-Taylor, Executive Director, B&R Group, will be joining me after the break.
Naval Group is the European leader in naval defense. It designs, manufactures, and maintains the surface vessels and submarines of its clients. Naval Group and Dassault Systèmes partnership is firstly the pooling of the two groups' skills and expertise, enabling PLM dedicated to the naval field and especially naval defense. Naval Group had clearly reached the limits of the current CAD solution. To maintain our technological lead and competitiveness, we chose the 3D Experience platform. 3D Experience opens perspectives on more innovative solutions, which will allow us to improve our design productivity. One of the goals is to converge methods and tools within a platform shared between our different Naval Group sites, but also with our partners. The value brought by the 3D Experience platform to Naval Group lies in the digital continuity across design, operational upkeep, and ship maintenance. All aspects of design are concerned, from the functional to the hull, including outfitting. Today, with the 3D Experience platform, we are designing mid-sized frigates, which are part of the new Bellara product line. The aim is to reduce our design cycle time with the 3D Experience platform. The platform will allow us to standardize our design methods between our different Naval Group sites, reduce our product development cycle times, and provide the ability to take into account the constraints of product lines from the very first design activities. Collaborative work with clients will be reinforced thanks to the platform. We are expecting more than this from this partnership with Dassault Systèmes. It's also the ability to interact with digital continuity with all our partners, with certification organizations like Bureau Veritas, for example, and with our customers in France and abroad.
You're watching Industry Insider with Dassault Systèmes. I'm Timothy Go. Now, throughout the next few weeks or months, we will be here to talk about the many ways you can take advantage of technology available today to take that first step and transform your business digitally to cope with the disruption we are seeing today and into the future. The first step, of course, is knowing that you need to make changes and then making that happen. So, what's involved in that process, and how can you reimagine the future and use available technology in your digital transformation? Well, joining me now is Ms. Christine Bridges-Taylor, Executive Director, B&R Group. B&R Enclosures of Australia is a manufacturer of an extensive range of standard and custom-built enclosures, data racks, cabinets, and residential, industrial, mining, data, telco, and hazardous area applications. And Christine is joining us today from Brisbane. Christine, welcome to Industry Insider. Now, first, tell us how the COVID-19 pandemic affected your business.
So we've seen quite a lot of change across all those segments, some more affected more than others. Universally, the change has been an increase in the uncertainty that we're operating with, the complexity of the decision making. The impact's really one of a journey that started with the first lockdown as it was happening, where we had to put into place health and safety measures, social distancing, started to introduce fewer people in the office, running factories, of course, that is not something that you can do remotely. So we had to implement practices in our factories. And then as time goes on, you start to see the impact in the marketplace. So overall, it's quite a lot of disruption. We are very grateful, though, that we're able to continue operating, that we're in the electrical and data segments, all quite important segments, and provide employment to our people and contribute to the communities that we operate in.
Okay, Christine, so after that first initial step that you just talked about, what did you do next to make sure that the business continues to operate throughout the pandemic?
So once we implemented various regimes around safe work practices, regular meetings, communication of what the plans, reduction in travel, reduction in visiting customers. We then moved on to contingency planning, making sure that we had enough backup in place. And then from then we settled in to increasing our capacity to be able to offer working from home and still provide the same level of service our customers were used to. We also needed to invest in some of our information technology. Really, the work that we've been doing with Dassault, we had developed to quite a good state that when the need to increase the number of people who are working remotely, work with customers more remotely, we were ready to pivot, to invest, and to move quite quickly.
Christine, what did you do next to make sure the business continues to operate throughout this pandemic?
Look, safety always comes first to mind. And really we can see that this is going to continue for months, 12 months, maybe a year, maybe more. But then the other change is around how do you win business working remotely? How do you maintain your service levels? And how do you keep engaging with those who still need to come to work? Because we're manufacturers and you can't do that remotely. The objectives are very much the same. The theme's the same, maybe the plots and how you achieve it. The focus on customers, commitment of qualities, chasing opportunities, delivering quotes, services fast, and being enthusiastic in how you go about your work. Agility is absolutely essential.
Okay, Christine, would you be able to share with us some of the strategies that you put in place in your digital transformation?
Very pleased to talk to you about our digital strategies because they come from our overall business strategy. So in our business, we aim to solve the ubiquitous problem of when equipment, people and wires all need to come together, and to do that safely and perform. There's standards, there's heat management, there's a whole range of issues. And there's usually complex supply challenges as well. But that's our business strategy, and we use our digital to inform and enable that strategy. And we look at what the trends have been, and we really aim to deliver transparency, high quality decision making, collaboration, value for money. We started with our factories, smart factories. We called it Project 86, from the Get Smart. That's some of our new generation who gave that. And then when we moved from the factories to servicing our customers with complex needs, we called that Project 99. So that's be smart and look good as well. And then the next layer of projects, which we have yet to start, which is in the digital marketplace.
So Christine, how is the 3D Experience platform helping?
At the time that COVID hit, we had been maybe nearly 12 months investigating what was the platform of choice for us in collaborating with our customers, and what would then integrate into our manufacturing systems. And it was the Platform 3DX is the partner that we chose, and we actually started with project management and collaboration, and had just got to the stage of starting to roll that out when COVID-19 hit, and we needed to accelerate that. So we found it quite invaluable to have that platform, to be able to identify where our various jobs are, where the quotes are at, what the workload is, and able to be quite accurate in transfer of information, high transparency. We're actually also using the platform in our general project management and using it for some of the agile methodologies, which are so appropriate to these times.
So what about in the real world, Christine? Is it helpful in thinking of like what if scenarios and helping in the decision-making process in the real world?
For engineers and practical people, dreaming up what if scenarios that seem so far-fetched used to be quite difficult. I guess that's one of the advantages of these times, is thinking of what's possible, even though a low probability is now not such a crazy thing to do. And those who know the method, though the advantage of scenarios is not so much the planning for exactly what's going to happen, it's to identify where your risk areas are, where your opportunities are, so that you can implement some changes, put in some measures, and maybe uncover some new value points. So it really does create some creative thinking in management.
So have you, Christine, figured out what you think the future would be like for your business? And also, what have you learned through this journey so far that would make it easier for business continuity?
We would call it the Imagineering, to coin a phrase, where you imagine what the world is likely to be and then where we can add value in that world. And you could see there was definitely a trend happening around digital transformation of business. We hadn't expected to accelerate as quickly as it has, that's come with the COVID pandemic. But we could see that there'd be great advantage in being local business, which is what B&R, we pride ourselves on our local presence, but to be able to use our IP globally around the world. And the platform enables us to communicate internally and also with our customers at speed, with efficiency, with accuracy. We aim to achieve a high trust, highly reliable, accurate work environment.
Mm-hmm. One last thing before we let you go, Christine. It's a very important thing as well. What would your advice be to for other SMEs out there at this point of the pandemic?
Advice to others is always a difficult thing. But let's see, what do we know about these times? Change is with us. Change is running faster. With change comes opportunity, comes lots of challenges. So when you're solving today's problem, keep a strong eye on the future. I found looking at the big end of town as a very good source of what the trends are, and then to engage with high quality partners such as Dassault, who can really help you in mapping out the path and introduce you to ways to implement the various technologies, taking into account all the issues that you need to address in adapting your business and your team. We've actually found the agile methodologies that Dassault introduced us to in a practical way has got a lot going for it in these times. Let's see, the other advice for SMEs is business leaders, look after yourself, look after your people, and look after yourself.
So looking after yourself, agility, and keeping your eye in the future, of course, very important advice there from Christine. Thanks for joining us, Christine. Christine Bridges-Taylor is the Executive Director of B&R Group, joining us there from Brisbane. Well, still ahead today, find out why your path to digital transformation has to begin now. We will hear insights from IDC that would hopefully convince you to take that first step. We'll be right back.
How can we safeguard our most precious resource?
¿Cómo podemos crear un mundo energéticamente positivo?
क्या हम 100% सस्टेनेबल उद्योग की कल्पना कर सकते हैं?
كيفاش ممكن نتحكموا أحسن على الصحة في المستقبل؟
أنو دقي دقاني إن باوي لير تأسيفا نقول دمان أجددي.
Wie können wir in der Zukunft nachhaltig besser konsumieren?
Comment pouvons-nous nous déplacer dans le monde entier sans nuire à l'environnement?
Como é que podemos construir o futuro entendendo o passado?
The only progress is human. Dassault Systèmes.
Admit it or not, many of us are not moving fast enough to digitize our operations, even though we know, and we knew a few years ago, that this is something we needed to do. Now, if the COVID-19 pandemic did not push you to digitize yet, maybe IDC Sandra Ng can convince you to do it now.
Thanks, team, and hello, everyone. Now, since the beginning of the pandemic, IDC has been tracking how organizations have been responding to the crisis. In the first 4 months, it was all about crisis response. But since the beginning of May, we noticed an increasing pool of organizations in our region, including in Singapore, that have begun their recovery journey. And we've also learned that organizations who have been focusing on digital transformation have actually demonstrated to be more resilient in this crisis. Now, in our bi-weekly COVID-19 Impact Sentiment Survey series, which started in March, there has been one consistent feedback. Approximately 80% of the organizations in our regions expected a decline in their revenue in the full year 2020, which is not a surprise. But only 20% of the same group of organizations have indicated that they expect to see a decline in terms of technology spending for the same period of time. And this points to the potential role of technology to enable business continuity during the crisis period, to optimize costs as part of the slowdown, to enable business resiliency in the recession, to seek a return to growth, and then finally, as the basis for the future enterprise. So the question for you is, where are you on this journey, particularly as you compare to the competition? Now, over the last few months, as we went through the sentiment survey, cumulatively, we found that the majority of the organizations in our region are either in the business resiliency or the targeted investment stage. Now, business resiliency is the most critical stage. Unless you are actually in this stage and you begin to prepare to build resiliency and then to scale resiliency within your organizations as well as the broader ecosystem, is going to be extremely difficult for you to return to growth in an accelerated fashion. And when we ask organizations in this region with regards to where they are prioritizing as far as resiliency dimensions are concerned, here are the top 3. Technology, operational, and financial. Now, most people would have expected financial resiliency to come out as number 1. But in fact, it is actually, as you can see on the slide, technology resiliency, which is the ability of an organization to quickly adapt its technology to accommodate new patterns of use. Now, given that technology resiliency is the number 1 driver and is the number one priority as far as organizations are concerned. Based on our additional research with the CXO community, which includes both technology heads as well as business leaders, here are the 9 identified technology-led practices that are critical for organizations, not only to navigate the current crisis, but also to build towards a new operating model. Now let's look at in the manufacturing sector. In the world of manufacturing, where most of the entities are business to business in nature, this crisis has actually demonstrated the criticality of having an online presence. In the past, B2B entities often make the assumptions that digital transformation and being digital first was really for B2C, which means the consumer brands. But this crisis with lockdown and circuit breaker here in Singapore has obviously taught us very differently. And for this particular organizations, as an example, future of intelligence, operations, customers, connectivity, as well as digital innovations were really the key pillars. Now, in the world of FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, the fluidity of the consumer marketplace from consumption to delivery has drastically changed operating models. Now, in this particular example, the brand recognized the importance of modernizing both front-end as well as back-end IT via cloud, which allow them to actually provide full data visibility to all business units since the beginning of the crisis. And this new capability enables the business to learn very quickly from successful units and to be able to respond just as fast. So the question is, what are the top challenges that you will need to address as you determine which of the technology-led practices can be better aligned to help you to achieve your technology resiliency goal? Now, in manufacturing, digital transformation is more than just implementing Industry 4.0. It's about new ways of inventing, learning, producing, as well as trading, a game changer for businesses. And this is why a holistic approach to digital transformation is so critical. Now, our research comparing digital versus non-digital manufacturing organizations have shown consistently that we see digital manufacturing organizations to perform better financially in both revenue as well as in profit terms. So the question is, are you digitally determined to change the game and to thrive in the new normal? So in closing, what lies ahead of all of us? There are 3 broad narratives: cost optimization, business resiliency, as well as digital acceleration. Organizations will need to master all 3 well. Definitely not an easy undertaking, but a necessity if you really want to beat the virus. The ability to execute this well will separate the leaders from the rest of the pack in the new normal. So with that, thank you very much for paying attention and listening in.
Thanks, Sandra. Well, Sandra is joining me right now to walk us through some of the points we just heard her talk about right there. So Sandra, should companies wait for a disruption to implement transformation, digital transformation, or is that going to be too late?
Well, clearly that, the COVID-19 crisis have taught us that it will be too late, right? Because when you look at, particularly during the lockdown period or the circuit breaker period, if you did not have, digital online presence, you were not connected to, your business partners, to your customers, you were not able to operate. So, and one of the data points that I talk about during my presentation is that organizations had actually invested in digital transformation in a holistic and strategic fashion prior to COVID-19 had actually demonstrated to be far more resilient than others in this environment. So clearly, the answer is no, you cannot wait for a disruption to implement transformation or digital transformation. You definitely have to press on, and this becomes the new normal.
So Sandra, in that case, how can companies then assess their own resiliency?
So when you think about resiliency is really about one's ability to recover quickly from difficulties, right? So when you extend it to organizations, it's really a series of different type of resiliency dimensions. Now, in my presentations, I already talk about the top 3, technology, operational, and financial resiliency, but there are another 3 brand resiliency, workforce resiliency, as well as leadership resiliency. So as organizations, you really need to work on all the 6 and master them if you want to lead in the new normal. And, for each of these elements, clearly, it kind of caters to different types of, kind of sub-dimensions or sub-criteria that we measure resiliency on. So these are the 6 kind of different types of resiliency dimensions that organizations would have to assess in order for them to know that they not only have built great resiliency, but they were also able to scale resiliency throughout the organization.
Sandra, I'm going to ask you about this. Are there any success stories, any companies out there that have mastered all these 6 resiliency measures you're talking about?
Well, I don't think that any brand out there, any organizations would dare to say that they have completed the journey and that they are, 100% resilient in all the 6 different dimensions. But I do have, a few kind of best practices and organizations that have, are moving in the right directions. Now, I will not be able to name them, but I'll be able to describe them in terms of the sector or the industry that they are in. So the first is, this is one of the largest logistic organizations, so clearly in the logistic industry, and this industry has actually done relatively well in this pandemic, right? Given that cargo is still moving and obviously e-commerce is doing extremely well. But for this particular organizations, they talk about moving medical supplies, and if you think about medical supplies, some of these items require kind of the right temperature, the right humidity level, and for them, the ability to ensure that they have the right type of transportations and therefore the right technology in place to ensure the shelf life of these medical supplies is really critical. So for this particular organizations, the ability from a technology resiliency perspective is really important in terms of their connected supply chain. The second example is retail in the essential goods sector. Again, this is another example of organizations that have actually done well given this pandemic. So, for this particular brand, they have actually have an extensive online presence. So, in fact, they have done very well because of their digital transformation journey that were taken prior to COVID-19. But even with that extensive online presence, they have also realized that the connectedness in kind of their back end to the supply chain is still not perfect. So currently they're working towards connecting better so that the inventory level can be better managed, and obviously their supply and their distribution chain can also be better connected. And then the third and final example is an organization in the aviation sector. Now we all know the aviation sector is probably one of the hardest hit in this pandemic. So there's a lot of downtime and obviously a lot of economic hardship. But for this organization, it's really talking about workforce resiliency. So the ability to upskill their workforce, during this downtime is really critical because they believe that every job and every role in the new normal will actually have technology embedded. So they're going through that process today.
So Sandra, in that case, what is the future for manufacturing organizations, or what will this new normal be for the manufacturing business? What will it look like?
In the world of manufacturing, clearly automation is a very big theme, right? So the use of robotics, the use of digital twins, the use of augmented workers. In fact, we're talking about, humans that will be assisted by basically technology for them to, really do well in the manufacturing world. Now, but it's not just only about automation, it's also about augmentation, right? That's where kind of, I talked earlier about the augmented workers, the rise of the augmented workers. So augmentation is really critical. That's where you bring intelligence, you bring analytics into the manufacturing world, and that's where digital twin becomes a significant portion of that business. And that will, be basically kind of one of the key elements of what manufacturing will look like in the new normal, right?
Okay, so you've got augmentation, you've got automation, robotics, and everything. What will the new company be like?
Well, that's $1 billion question, isn't it? So I would say that, in this new world, basically you have to look back at, what I talk about in my presentations when I talk about the 9 technology-led practices. Organizations would have to actually bring all of the 9 together in order to be able to create the right business model, the right operating model, so that they can thrive and lead in the new normal. So, when you think about organizations, clearly they need to be digital. And in fact, in the past, before COVID-19. When we talk about digital transformation, while some companies were already talking about digital first, the majority of the organizations were not really talking about digital first. Digital is just part of the environment. In the new normal, digital will have to be really leading, right front and center of the organization. So the ability to bring in connectedness into the environment, intelligence in terms of analytics into environment, from an operational standpoint, automation and augmentations will have to come into play. Trust for sure is going to be a big factor because of security and obviously data privacy. We see innovation in terms of software being embedded into your organizations so that you can create applications and you can really, pivot from one innovation to another innovation very quickly and then commercialize your products and services as well as deliver the right customer experience. All of this are going to be important. So leveraging and mastering those 9 technology-led practices will basically allow organizations to create, this new type of companies. But it's not just, one type of company, right? Because then, everyone will look exactly the same. But those will be the key ingredients that will get you to this, creating one of those new type of companies that will help you to compete well in the new normal.
Thanks, Sandra. That's Sandra Ng from IDC there. Those very useful insights. Remember, if there are topics here you want to know more about, just reach out to Dassault Systèmes or leave a comment below. And that's all we have time for today. Next on Industry Insider with Dassault Systèmes, we will walk through the factory of the future. What do you think it will look like? Join me on Thursday, the 10th of September, 5 p.m. Singapore time on LinkedIn live stream. I'm Timothy Go. Thanks for watching.